Professor of Business Economics in Birmingham. What was at one time, of course, the heart of British car manufacturing, no longer the case. But David, just wondering what your assessment of what Stellantis has warned, i.e. that this could be a threat to the sustainability of our UK manufacturing operations. I mean, that does mean Ellesmere Port, which is basically, along with Nissan, all we got left.
Well, I mean, I think it's not a surprise. Car makers have been warning about this potential problem since last year. And basically what's happening is that the rules are getting tightened up in terms of the local content required in battery electric vehicles. And essentially because the battery electric sort of supply chain is not built up quickly enough in the EU and the increase in raw material prices, it means a lot more value is still coming from Asian countries. And all car makers, I think, in the EU are going to struggle with this. So it's not a surprise, and it's a big deal.
But is there a particular problem for Britain? I mean, I gather over on Europe there are, 35 battery plants or electric car plants either in the pipeline or being commissioned. What we've got at the moment, of course, is Nissan in the northeast. British Volt doesn't seem to be getting its act together, and that's it.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think it's now 40 gigafactories being operational, built or planned. So huge effort going into in the EU in making this happen. The UK has just got one, so we are barely off the starting grid. I mean, there's the problem over the Brexit trade rules. There's also the fact we don't have any sort of industrial policy in the UK. You look at the Biden government, 400 billion in support going into green manufacturing, including making batteries. The EU has responded to that through their Green Deal manufacturing plan. China doing loads as well. We're doing nothing. We actually got more flexibility in the UK post-Brexit to support our industry if we wanted to. And yet what we've chosen to do is just sit on the sidelines watching. The other big problem in the UK is high energy prices. And making batteries is energy intensive. So that puts off investment here.
Is there a question actually as to whether you should be going down this road anyway? Because the EU clearly is looking at extending the life of the internal combustion engine, albeit with more green fuels. Ferrari at the top of the tree says, no, we're going to stay with the internal combustion engine. Is it the case that perhaps we would be going down the wrong track if we went fully electric, fully battery?
No, I can see why you're asking, but that's a complete red herring. The industry is going electric, full stop. This whole distraction about e-fuels and synthetic fuels, it might mean a few classics stay on the road, and that's lovely. I mean, I love classic old cars. I'd like to see them carry on. But it's a waste of time, frankly. The cost of that synthetic fuel will be really expensive, and anyway, it's going to get gobbled up by the aviation industry. So automotive is going electric.
Okay, so just to touch on this issue about do you support industries, we remember, of course, what the government had to do with British Leyland back in the 70s. It kept swallowing money and all we got at the end of it was an Austin Allegro. Is that why perhaps Jeremy Hunt is a little reluctant to do it? Or can we just not match the figures that the United States is putting into it?
I certainly think there's this ideological issue within government about state intervention, and yet that's not what industrial policy is about these days. It's not top-down picking winners and getting an Austin Allegro. It is about a process of participation between government and business, identifying opportunities and challenges, and then coming up with policies to try and do constructive things. Also, if we want big investment in green technologies, we've got to speed it up because the market won't get us there quick enough. US is doing it, the EU is doing it, China is doing it. We have a fundamental question. Do we want to do this or not, or want to see the action take place elsewhere? Now, I would like to see it happen in the UK because I think automotive is hugely important, 800,000 jobs, important for exports, research and development, levelling up and driving productivity growth. So if the government thinks that's important, it needs to put its money where its mouth is.
Okay, well, we understand Kemi Badenoch is meeting those leaders from Stellantis, the parent company, today. Do you assume that is the message that she's getting from them?
I would think so. I think that they've been saying for some time they're going to be struggling with these trade rules. There needs to be an extension of that. There also needs to be a much more supportive industrial policy. It's very interesting. Stellantis's contribution to that Business Select Committee inquiry, they touched on the fact there is not enough support, like in the US, and that energy prices are too high.
Professor David Bailey, thank you very much indeed for taking us through that. And of course, we'll see what emerges from that meeting, crisis or otherwise, and see what the way forward is. Thank you very much indeed.